The Seattle Kraken one day closer to a return to play in the National Hockey League. And yeah, the drama regarding hockey and the thin veil of politics just continues to get weirder as we head towards the Four Nations Championship.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your first ever host of Locked On Kraken, still chugging along all these years later. And the Seattle Kraken have hit the ice. They are back at, practice. We said earlier in the week that they are already in Florida, and we won't have a squad cast ahead of the game, but we should be able to catch Armando Velez after this game. So Seattle, please do your thing so I don't have to sit on that podcast talking about the Florida Panthers winning once again. Anyway, a few updates from the Seattle Kraken. We did see that Jordan Eberle and his conditioning loan is over for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. It looked like it was just an opportunity for him to be in a hockey setting and to get some practices under his belt. Of course, the NHL stalled out until the end of the Four Nations Faceoff, which will be tonight. And we'll talk about that coming up on today's show. But, Eberle getting back to the ice, I've alluded to this a few different times now on the show. What does that realistically mean for the Seattle Kraken? Well, on the positive, right, the actual, Kraken's perspective of things, this means that we have our captain back, and it's good to see Eberle back. He's been itching to get back. I've seen him around the team even when he was still on crutches. And so it's always tough to come back from an injury. That being said, this is a team that a lot of people think will be and likely should be sellers at the trade deadline, which is coming around the bend here. And so Eberle, I don't know that he becomes a part of any of the trade negotiations for the deadline or even in the offseason. If he does, of course, he would be the second captain that we lose because the team, quite frankly, just wasn't good enough. And so I don't know. I haven't seen Eberle associated in any ways. I think maybe getting him back on the ice, and we'll see what happens there. I think it also is going to be interesting to see how things with regard to the lines change a little bit, if at all, with Eberle, should he be able to come back in earnest. We heard from Allison Lucan, the other day that Eberle was back. We talked about that. And then yesterday, Allison Lucan also noting that goaltender Alice Stetska has been recalled from the Coachella Valley Firebirds. That sends Victor Osman back to the Kansas City Mavericks. That signals to me that Philip Grubauer is gonna stay with the Firebirds. And, how long that's gonna last, I guess we'll have to see. We're still just a few days into the days that teams could actually skate. The Kraken, again, have opted to do that in Florida. We haven't had any media updates or availability directly from the Kraken, but also, again, they're on the road. But so, yeah, no return of Philip Grubauer, at least not immediately out of the Four Nations break. It goes back to something I said on yesterday's episode. I mean, what are the Kraken going to do? What are the Seattle Kraken going to do regarding goaltending? That's a lot of salary to eat for someone who isn't really going to be able to contribute at the NHL level. But then the other side of that is Alice Stetska, fun guy, love when he's mic'd up. And this is a tough stretch for the Seattle Kraken. Again, that means it's going to be a tough stretch on Joey Daccord. playing the Florida Panthers. Then you've got Tampa Bay. We went over this a little bit on yesterday's episode, but you've got let me just pull up the schedule for those watching on YouTube. We've got again the Panthers, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, and then we take on Vancouver again. Vancouver, who looks like they will have Quinn Hughes back. That's another update. Talked about it a little bit. Quinn Hughes, I had seen reports that he wasn't medically cleared. I've seen other reports that alluded to maybe Hughes making that decision just because he would have to travel in short order to Boston to be with Team USA for tonight's game, but then also to be back with Vancouver. They're playing Las Vegas on the other side of Four Nations. So, anyway, Vancouver getting Quinn Hughes back in any shape and form is going to be significant. And the Seattle Kraken are going to be in the throes of that. This is a Kraken team that still needs wins. If we look at the likelihood of them making the playoffs, per Money Puck, the playoff odds for the Seattle Kraken are less than 1%. And their percent for getting the first pick in the upcoming draft is at 7.2%. So of the teams, if we just look at of the teams that have less than 1% chance to make the playoffs, that it would include Buffalo per Money Puck, Buffalo, Seattle, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Nashville Predators, the San Jose Sharks, and the Chicago Ice Hockey team. We are second to last with regard to the percentage to get that first round pick. The last is Buffalo. The best odds, Chicago again, or excuse me, San Jose again, and then Chicago. San Jose has 23.2% odds. The Chicago hockey team, 15.4% odds, only two in double figures. So this is tough. I hate tanking conversations. I don't know what is gained for this team. Honestly, either way, that's a tough position to be in, knowing that we've still got a lot of time before the Stanley Cup is hoisted once again. And that means we've got a lot to break down and talk about on Locked On Kraken, because it's not looking like we're going to be in the playoffs. So, but I suppose that's a conversation for another day, because on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, we're going to talk a little bit about Four Nations and some of the things happening around Four Nations coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken, once again brought to you by our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And it's a complete protein that will offer all 9 essential amino acids. The no-shell Wonderful Pistachios are great for grab and go if you need a snack so you don't get hangry on the road. And of course, if you like that satisfying crack of opening each shell, there's also that as an option. And so whether you're running between meetings or dropping off your children, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking, Kraken fans, with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here On the night of the Four Nations Faceoff Championship game. And for those who follow me on Black Rosie Media, we have our newsletter, the Gold Medal Dispatch. And I write in there, can Four Nations Faceoff be like the men's equivalent to the rivalry series? The rivalry series started in 2018 after the United States won Olympic gold for the first time in 20 years, beating, of course, Canada in overtime, shootout fashion. It was Jocelyn Lamoureux with the air quotes, oops, I did it again move. If you have no idea what that is, but you are fascinated to learn, head over to the Gold Medal Dispatch because I break that down. That's my Olympic newsletter. We're back to weekly because we're less than a year away from the Olympics. Black Rosie Media, my company, has been accredited once again to go to the Olympics. I'm super jazzed. Super jazzed. I don't know why I said jazzed. I never say that. Anyway, I'm super excited about that. Another Olympic Games, my first ever Olympic experience was in Beijing. That was there was a lot going on. So I'm excited. Hopefully, there won't be a worldwide pandemic. There might be other things happening, but either way, it's going to be a good time. And I'm on track to make it to Milano Cortina. And I talk a little bit about some of the challenges that site has been having, again, in the Gold Medal Dispatch. Back to the Four Nations Faceoff. Will it be the rivalry series of men's hockey? I hope so. If you watch the squad show, I took exception to the title. We were all wrong. No, not all of us. Not all of us were wrong because I told you that international hockey is very exciting. I also said that I wasn't sure how things would be branded and marketed from the NHL and its broadcast partners. I think there's still more that can be done in that arena and to that end, but the hockey was pretty good. It didn't start out as physical as everyone is leaning into for that preliminary round against the United States and Canada. And we broke that down. Some people saying, oh, it was absolutely rigged. Some people saying it was absolutely not rigged. I I honestly don't know at this point. I will say the NHL needed this to be a success. As we'll talk about in the next segment, there have been other elements that for some people are fueling this feud, which I find extremely interesting. But again, we can talk about that a little bit more in the final segment. I I hope that this is what we see instead of the NHL All-Star Weekend. Now, I got to travel to Toronto for an NHL All-Star Weekend as part of a media trip, and that was super cool. Um, but All-Star weekends, I think, have had their run. All-Star weekends in any sport are more about the business that happens than the actual sport itself. And at that point, I don't know how you fix it from the fan, but specifically the player perspective. This could be it. Playing for pride, playing for your country. What I would hope is that the NHL does a better job of showcasing players that are representing countries other than the two North American countries. Well, the two North American countries that are heavily represented, um, you know, in hockey. Not a lot of Mexican players, ice hockey players. Not that they don't exist. Austin Matthews has Mexican heritage. Um, but I think that's a great format. The questions that I have regarding that, and I mentioned this on the squad show, what does that look like with relation to the CBA? Is the NHL going to expand the playoffs? Is it going to expand the regular season? The salary cap is unfrozen, so expecting that to go up again. But what does this do? Because it's taxing on the bodies. We've seen, unfortunately, McAvoy with an illness and an infection of some kind. Um, we'll have to see what's the final word with some of the injuries that we've seen throughout this tournament. And what is are players supposed to be more quote unquote dedicated to their NHL team? Are they going to on their own want to be more dedicated to their national or their national team, their federation? I think we've seen a mixed bag when it came there. People criticizing a player like Sidney Crosby, and others who we've talked about on the squad shows for, hey, like you didn't compete in your last handful of NHL games, and now you're going to the Four Nations Faceoff. On the other side of things, in the NBA, we saw that LeBron James has been dealing with an injury, named an all-star, and then pulled out of the all-star competition last minute. Could that spot have gone to someone else had he done and been transparent with what everyone kind of knew was going to be the case anyway, that he wasn't going to play? So I think those are the questions that need to be answered. But as far as format, if the PA, who obviously seems to be on board with Four Nations, if the PA and the league can figure it out, I say go. We're hearing that it is going to be Bennington again. I said I was talking on CBS Sports. I was surprised Aiden Hill didn't get any go here. But we're hearing that it's going to be Jordan Bennington again. Connor Hellebuck in net for the United States. They come into this game with Bennington an .892 save percentage, 2.6 goals against, definitely inflated against Finland. And then it is Connor Hellebuck, a .957 save percentage, 1.00 goals against average, in 2 wins for the United States. Ottinger. There, I feel like I overthink it every single time. Jake Ottinger. Jake Ottinger has the 1 loss for the United States, but a 206 goals against average and a .913 save percentage. So, still not bad at all. When we look at some of these stats, 25% on the power play for the United States. That's compared to 33.3% on the nose by Canada. That's first overall in the tournament. Both are 100% on the penalty kill. And so tied for first there. Face-off battles, 55.7% clip for the United States compared to 51.7% for Canada. Goals for tied at 3.33 goals for per game. Goals against, 3 goals against per game for Canada, and 1.33 for the United States. So, the numbers are favorable right now for the United States. Zach Werenski, 5 points, 5 assists. Jake Gensel, 3 goals, leads the United States. Sidney Crosby leads Canada with 5 points. He has 4 assists, 1 goal. Nathan MacKinnon leads with 3 goals. So I think it's really going to be how these teams are able to battle back from any injuries. Some of the players that we saw slotted out, especially for the United States, will they be able to go? If it comes down to goaltending, which it might, I've said this a few times, I like the United States for goaltending. If it comes down to, I don't know, best overall team, honestly, the United States has looked the best in this tournament. I do think they're young, they're scrappy, they've played exactly that way. Now, whether some of the comments regarding this game and to put politics aside while also making it right in the center of this whole tournament, that's been wild. I don't know. Does Canada get juiced up? Does it even matter? This game is going to be in Boston. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. All right. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. And we're going to take you to Rachel Donner, who is on site, boots on the ground for today's championship game in the 2025 Four Nations Faceoff. Rachel, what's the biggest news of the day?
with Locked On. Rachel Donner here with Locked On NHL. It is the calm before the storm for tonight's NHL Four Nations Championship game between Team USA and Team Canada. And of course, there is a political overtone to this game. It cannot be denied, despite the fact that both coaches and all of the players are trying to put that aside, with US President Donald Trump calling Team USA today prior to the game to wish them luck. All the players are trying to put that aside for hockey and talk about what this game means for the game of hockey overall and the growth of the sport. But it should be a good game regardless. There's a lot on the line here in terms of the hockey, and we are all looking forward to it. We'll report back after the game.
Right. All right. You heard there from Rachel. The political undertones are absolutely there. You heard that she reported that the president of the United States did indeed call Team USA. This comes after Bill Guerin made some comments inviting the president, also making remarks about the 51st state. We talked about that on the episode. There've been also in a social media post, the active president of the United States referring to Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau. Now, as far as I know, and please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe that his official title is Prime Minister. And I'll be honest, this is my ignorance. I don't know if there are placements in government in Canada, excuse me, where you have governors. Governor is, hello, governor. Like, it's a common enough word in political structure. I really don't know. But if I had to guess, the active president of the United States used the term governor very much to lean into Canada becoming the 51st state. And the vice president made some comments. I am not going to repeat them word for word because we do not curse on the Locked On Podcast Network. But effectively, he, shall I say, is willing Team USA on because nobody boos the Star Spangled Banner. That was in direct reference to Canadians during the Montreal portion of the Four Nations tournament, booing during the national anthem of the United States. And there was also a reference in, the active vice president's remarks regarding the tariffs increasing with respect to this hockey game. Oh, I host a podcast, so I host multiple podcasts, and there's always you ratchet the energy, the juice, the jam, the sandpaper up when you're going up against some opponents, and sometimes you get extra riled up because of the history. I honestly don't have a handle on how much of this is real versus how much of this is sports talk that has gotten political, because I'm told all the time when I want to talk about Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ plus community, or the fact that I literally am a Black woman, I'm often told, like, keep politics out of sports. And yet here we are at the Four Nations Faceoff. And me, as a poli-sci major, I have plenty of thoughts. I have plenty of things to say about this. But also there's just this feeling of, like, y'all are not serious. Or is this for real? And I find myself leaning into history. And if I think about the role that sports has played in politics, including in the 60s, the 70s, I mean, quite literally every decade, but the 60s and 70s were very prominent for reasons, for specific reasons. Colin Kaepernick recently, JT Brown in the NHL. And then also, I find myself thinking about those Olympic Games where Jesse Owens put a lot of U.S. and global politics on his back. And if you want to know what I mean by that, Black Rosie Media, my friend Angelica Rodriguez and I, Angelica, we are going to break a little bit of this down. We want to see what's going to happen in the Four Nations Faceoff, but we want to lean into the politics of it all. So make sure you're following Black Rosie Media, because we're going to break this down in a podcast and we are not going to hold back. I'm curious. I'm curious to see how this goes down. I wish that I could talk and lean into the hockey almost exclusively, because I do think that we'll get some pretty neat hockey, some pretty neato, amazing hockey tonight. And that's going to be exciting. I'm not looking forward to some of the other stuff and the commentary, because even if these are quote unquote jokes, there's just a lot going on right now that makes it tough. So we're going to talk about the politics of sport, and some overlap that I feel is happening. So that's going to be interesting. Like, I'm excited about it because Angelica and I have a good time. I also think that, again, there's just a lot happening right now, so that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I am looking forward to tonight's game, like I said, from the pure hockey perspective of it all. Oops, let's put that back up. The pure hockey perspective of it all. And I do hope that the Four Nations Faceoff becomes the men's equivalent of the rivalry series. That 2018 Pyeongchang Games was spicy. And the that was spicy. That was hella spicy. And I mean, I don't know. That went to an overtime shootout. Overtime, will we get free hockey, extra hockey tonight? Let me know your big, bad, bold predictions. Oh, I'm leaning towards USA winning because of all of the things that I said stats-wise. I'm leaning towards USA winning. That being said, I do think that I wonder if some of, again, this political stuff happening is going to rile up Canada, because apparently that's why we had those 3 fights in 9 seconds, right? Yeah, I'm leaning toward those being more staged than anything. Are we gonna get? We had 3 fights in 9 seconds in prelim. Now there is a trophy on the line, and your politicians have been talking smack back and forth. So how many fights? What's the over under? We get 5 fights in the first minute and a half. Huh? You taking the over? You're taking the under. I don't like hockey fights. I hope they just play a good solid game, but it seems like, even though, as Rachel said, now everyone's trying to downplay it, the gauntlet has been thrown down. That is a speaking point, because people from, as far as I know, the United States primarily have made it a speaking point, while also trying to not make it a speaking point, which is so confusing and odd, but also on par. That's our show for today. Tomorrow, of course, we'll talk about the winner, but we'll be able to lean a little bit more into the Seattle Kraken, as they will be getting ready for their game against Florida, the Florida Panthers. And as I said, we're not going to have a pregame or a preview, a Squadcast preview, but we will have a Squadcast recap. So I will make my plea in all earnesty. I will make my plea to the Seattle Kraken on tomorrow's episode for them to win the game, so I don't have to listen to Armando Velez gloat about a Panthers win. That's what you got coming up. That's what's in store for you, my Kraken, Locked On Kraken listeners. Thank you again for making us a part of your daily destination. And a reminder that you should check out Locked On NHL. And it should be your second listen from the squad shows. I was on the most recent two squad shows. Also on Saturdays, we have the women's hockey report. Rachel and I are hosting that. But every day, Monday through Saturday, we will bring you the daily league-wide stories that matter with local coverage you love from the Locked On Podcast Network. And you can find all of that on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. And we hold fast. We stay true and loud and proud. We say, well, on Saturday, let's go Kraken. I'll let you insert the team that you're rooting for tonight. I'm Switzerland. Call me Switzerland. All right. Until the next episode, peace out, everyone.